This week's PARSHA, PARSHA's Mishpatim, is packed with laws, tremendous amount of Torah Shebal Peh, and at the same time, there's a tremendous amount of Musar, encouragement and motivation that we can get from many of the things, as we'll see. Last week's Parsha, Parshas Yisro, concludes speaking about the Mizbeach, the altar in the Beis HaMikdash, on which the karbonos, the sacrifices, were brought. And this week's Parsha begins with the words Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tosem lifneihem, speaking about the Sanhedrin, a court, a high court, a supreme court, the highest level judges, which also sat in the Beis HaMikdash, next to the altar, not far from where the Mizbeach was the Lishkas HaGozes, which is the room which the Sanhedrin operated in. And the question is, why are these two written next to each other? We know that very often in the Gemara speaks about smuchim, that when two topics are written next to each other in the Torah, there's a reason, there's a message in it for us. We know that the Mizbeach, the altar, was used for bringing karbonos, sacrifices. Today we don't have karbonos, we don't have sacrifices. The pasuk says, "Uneshalma porim sifasenu," that we substitute for the sacrifices with our lips, our prayers. Our tefillos are in place of the karbonos on the mizbeach. And in fact, Hashem says, "V'haviosim el har kodeshi, v'simachtim beveis tefilosi." I will bring the Jews to my holy mountain. I'll give them joy and happiness in my house of prayer. Oiloisehem v'zivchehem l'rotzoin al mizbechi. And their sacrifices will be brought on my altar. So we see the pasuk is putting these two together, the tefillah and the karbonos in the mizbeach. Why are these right next to the Sanhedrin? The Sanhedrin was all about Mishpatim. Mishpat, another word for Mishpat, justice, is emes, truth. There's a pasuk, Mishpatei Hashem emes. The justice of Hashem is truth. That's the real truth. And the Torah is teaching us an incredibly important lesson about tefillah, about sacrifices, karbonos, and about tefillah. That these tefillah alone is not enough. Tefillah has to be attached to and combined with emes. We say this in the morning in our tefillah between Kriya Shema and Shmon Esrei. We say emes ve'emuna choik v'lo yavor. That these two are inseparable. These two go together. Emes, truth, and emuna, faith. We know that faith is another word for tefillah. There's a pasuk, oidia emunascha befi. I show my faith in you with my mouth. A person who davens to Hashem, based on the quality and the quantity of a person's tefillah, that defines the person's real faith in Hashem. So here the Torah is telling us that these two must be together. The Mizbeach, the tefillah, the karbonos, the tefillah, and the Mishpatim, the Torah, the emes. This is why we find that in a shul, in every Beit Knesset, one of the most important things is the Aron Kodesh, where we have the Sifrei Torah, the Torah which is emes, which shows that our claim to fame, the reason why we expect Hashem to listen to us, is because we listen to Hashem. Through the Torah, Hashem is speaking to us. In our prayers, we're speaking to Hashem. And these two go together. These two go together. This is why it's a custom in many shuls, and Rabbi Zal puts tremendous emphasis on this, to learn Torah before the prayer or after the prayer, because that's one of the things that ensures the effectiveness of the prayer, of the tefillah. The Gemara speaks about Torah, the study of Torah, that it's called Yalas Chen, Shema Lechen Aloim Deha. The Torah places a grace, a charm on those who learn it, which means that when that person speaks, people want to hear what he has to say. And Hashem wants to hear what he has to say. So this is why these two are put together. the Mizbeach at the end of Parshas Yisro, which is the Karbonos, the Tefillah, and right next to it, it's dependent on the Eila HaMishpatim Asher Tosem Lefneihem. That if, to the degree that we will accept and show respect to the Torah by studying it, by fulfilling it, to that degree our Tefillah has this grace and is readily accepted by Hashem. One of the discussions in the Parsha, Hashem speaks about one of the highest forms of charity, which is called Halvoas Chen, or Gemilus Chesed, where we know that one form, one way of helping a person is by giving the person a donation. Person knows that somebody's struggling financially, they're having a very difficult time, they have a lot of bills to pay, and the person says, here you go, here's $100, here's $1,000, here's $5,000 to give you a push, to help you cover some of your bills or all of your bills. And I hope Hashem will help you further. I hope Hashem will help you get out of this mess, get out of this hole, and get out of the red and get into the black. That's one way of helping a person. And the Gemara says there's a higher way of helping a person, which is giving the person a loan, which is usually a larger sum than what the person would be able to give as a donation, as a contribution, in order to help the person start up a business, or in order to help the person start a means of being able to support himself. And the Gemara mentions that there's a few ways that this halva, this loan, is considered more special, this gemach, than tzedakah. It's one thing to give a person a fish. It's another thing to give a person a fish. It's another thing to teach a person how to fish, where the person can continue to do it, for the rest of their life, taking care of themselves. So here, we know that the Torah tells us that Hashem himself fulfills the Torah. Hashem visits the sick, in the case of Avram Avinu after his bris milah. Hashem davens, Hashem puts on tefillin, the Gemara says. The Gemara defines what's written in Hashem's tefillin. And here, Rabbi Nosson Zal explains that we know that Hashem created the world originally and did not present the Torah until 2,448 years after creation. It was only then that he presented the Torah, which is, again, our claim to existence, where the pasuk says, Im loi brisi, chukoi shamayim v'oretz loi samti. Hashem says, if not for my covenant, if not for my bris, which is the Torah, then the laws of heaven and earth cease to work. It all falls apart, which means that the existence of heaven and earth is dependent on the Torah. Oh, really? Then how did it exist for those 2,448 years? The answer is American Express. Credit cards. Hashem extended credit. Hashem actually extended credit. He gave us a loan in a sense. We were living on borrowed time in a sense, where Hashem showed this incredible chesed that he was willing to give us life, to give without getting anything back in return yet. That's one example of this loan on the part of Hashem, this gemach. And another example is when a Jew commits a sin, when a Jew goes directly against Hashem. There's a pasuk that says that one way of Hashem responding to that is Ish becheto yumas. Person commits a sin, it's a disconnect from Hashem. Hashem is the source of life. Hashem is the source of sustenance. A person commits a sin, he's cutting that cord. He should be dead. And yet we know that in the vast majority of cases, Hashem does not respond like that. Hashem waits. Hashem gives the person an extension. He gives the person a loan. He gives the person credit. That I will allow you to exist, hoping that at some point in the future you're going to pay me back. Just like when a person gives a person, he extends a person a loan. I'm giving you this now, right now for free, you're not giving anything, with the hope that at some later date you're going to return it. And we know that our observance of Torah and mitzvahs is in this form. We know that in the Shulchan Aruch, when it defines the laws, it says Chayav Adam, a Jew is obligated to do this and this. We're obligated to. Chayav is like when a person borrows something from somebody, you have an obligation to return it. So that our existence in this world is in this form of loan. That Hashem extends credit, He lends us with the hope, and He's patient. He's very patient. The pasuk says Hashem is erech apayim, that He has tremendous patience. And the Gemara says apayim means plural, to tzaddikim and to rishoim. Hashem shows tremendous patience. And again, He sets an example for us that we are expected to emulate the ways of Hashem. Just like Hashem lends, and He's willing to wait to be able to receive back, so too a Jew who is in a position to do it, when he sees that another person has a need and the person can't support themselves, they can't get themselves on their own feet by themselves, to be able to follow the example of Hashem. And even though I'm not getting anything right now in return, I'll wait and give the person a chance to get on their feet, and then with Hashem's help, they'll return it to me. Note, the person that's borrowing, if a person borrows without specifying when they intend to return the money, an indefinite loan is a robbery. That's called stealing. If a person borrows and it's not perfectly clear up front when and how they intend to return the money, that's not a loan, chas v'shalom, that's stealing. And if the person who lends the money, if the time comes that was specified when the person who borrowed needs to return it, and they don't show up on that day, they don't return it, and they don't call, they don't notify the person who lent them the money that I know I'm supposed to give it back today or tomorrow, please, I'm letting you know that there's an extenuating circumstance, something happened that I won't be able to give it to you tomorrow. Can you wait another 2 weeks? Can you wait a month? Can you wait 3 weeks for me to return it? If the person does that, if the person shows that level of responsibility and honesty, then the person who extended the loan, if they can, it's a mitzvah to give that extension, to say, okay, another 3 weeks, that's the new date is XYZ. If the person doesn't do that, then chas v'shalom, that person destroys their credibility completely. The person doesn't call, they don't acknowledge that they owe the money, they don't acknowledge that they're supposed to pay on that day. They don't say anything, and the lender has to call the borrower and say, hey, what happened? Weren't you supposed to return? Oh, I forgot. Oh, I thought you don't need it right now, so I thought... Whether I need it or not is not your decision. That's not something, and that has nothing to do with you. If you made a commitment, you made an agreement to do something, you don't keep your word, chas v'shalom, then again, the person destroys their credibility. And I'm speaking from experience that I saw with one of my rabbis, Zechron Livracha, Reb Michal Dorfman, Zechron Livracha, who for a period of years ran a gemach, a loan fund, to people that he knew, people he was close to, and despite the fact that he knew the people in most cases, every time there was a loan extended, there was a piece of paper written. It had to be written down. That's the Jewish way. It's written down that on this and this day, so-and-so borrowed so much and so much money and intends to return it on this and this day. And then there had to be 2 co-signers, 2 people co-signing, assuming responsibility that if the borrower doesn't pay on that day, then the lender has the right to go to these 2 co-signers and get them to pay exactly as if they borrowed the money. They're under the obligation to pay exactly as if. And usually he was careful to do this only to the people who were members of the yeshiva that he operated, where he paid salaries. Every single month, these people got checks. So that if a person didn't return the loan, he would have the ability to garnish the person's salary, that person's salary, and the other two Arevim's salaries. So we have 3 salaries. And unfortunately, just to show how powerful the Satan is, how powerful the Yetzer is, despite that, there were many times that it was difficult to be able to get the money back. A person would say, like, how is that possible? How could it be? And the answer is that this item of money is it's like dynamite. It's like nitroglycerin. It's a very delicate thing. It's something that a person can do incredible positive with, and a person can cause tremendous damage, harm to themselves and to others if they misuse it, if they don't act properly. And this week's PARSHA, Mishpatim, a major part of the PARSHA deals with this, showing us that this is a critical piece of being a Jew, of serving Hashem. In fact, the Gemara tells us in Shabbos that when a person leaves the world and they come before the heavenly court and they audit, they review the person's entire life, everything they did throughout their life, before they go into the detail review, there's 6 basic questions that the person has to answer. According to many opinions, the first question is, Nososo v'nosato be'emuna. Were you trustworthy in the business that you transacted? When it came to money matters, were you trustworthy? Was a word a word? Did you keep to your commitment, to your responsibility? Or again, chas v'shalom, did the lender ever have to call you to remind you that a loan came due and you didn't say anything about it, chas v'shalom? Obviously, this is one of the things that a person needs to learn about, and a person needs to daven to Hashem, to beg Hashem, that in this world, in this olam hasheker, in this world of distractions, and in this topsy-turvy world, where you would think that the person who's borrowing from a lender would feel deep gratitude and appreciation, usually in most cases, and here again I heard this from my rabbi who ran this loan fund, that it was an extremely rare experience to feel any gratitude. On the contrary, when the person had to return the money, very often it was the feeling like, if he were any decent guy, he would tell me to just keep it. I mean, he knows how much I need, and probably he has so much more money than because again, he's lending the money, so he's got to be rich. He's got, the fact that he doesn't just say keep it, the fact that he just shows, you can imagine what kind of guy he is. This is how upside down the world. This is what the Yetzer Hara, what the evil inclination could do to us, if we allow it. If we allow it. Whereas if a person studies the Torah properly, and a person is zoiche to shimush chachamim, to spend time in the presence of quality talmidei chachamim, people who are really genuinely religious Jews, and they watch how that person behaves. I remember there were different times, for a period of maybe 20 some odd years, that this rabbi was operating the yeshiva. There was never a dream of a loan. The word loan was not part of his vocabulary in terms of him taking a loan. There was a certain point in time when a project came into existence, when Russia fell, communism fell, perestroika, and it became possible from people from Israel with Israeli passports to travel to Ukraine, to travel to go to Uman, and there became a need to build a shul there, a synagogue there, to accommodate thousands of people who would be coming from all over the world for Rosh Hashanah and other times to daven there. And this rabbi undertook that project. And in the beginning, there also, through tremendous tefillah and with all of his qualities, Hashem made a couple of miracles up front to kickstart the project. But as those who get involved in any major building project, construction project, know that especially building mikvahs to accommodate thousands of people and doing it in Ukraine, where you have super freezing temperatures in the winter and hot in the summer, the construction that has to be done to ensure that it won't crack, and all the different things regarding to mikvah costs an incredible amount of money, much more than standard construction. And after a short while of getting involved in the project, suddenly the bills were coming in much faster than the donations. And at one point, my rabbi said to me, all right, it looks like we're going to have to borrow money. And I remember hearing it was a shock, because we had been working together with tens of thousands of dollars, operating a kollel, 100 people, and other chesed, all kinds of things. There was never a thought of borrowing for anything. And suddenly he said, I'm going to have to borrow, and let's think, who could we borrow from? And he started thinking of different people, made a list of about 10 people, this one, and he said, okay, get in touch with this one, get in touch, see if they can. And sure enough, b'chazdei Hashem, most of them, the response was yes, because they knew who they were dealing with. They saw how this person was in money matters. And then everything was written down, exactly how much was borrowed, what date it had to be returned by. And in most of the cases, the money was returned either on time or before the time. There were several cases where he reviewed the situation, and he saw that it looked like the money was not going to be able to be returned by the date. He said, get in touch with this person, see if they can wait another few months, find out. And again, in most cases, the response was yes, and b'chazdei Hashem, the project was conducted. This rabbi left the world without owing a human being a penny. Every single penny was returned from that project in other ways, because of the fact that we have a Torah. We have a Torah, we have a PARSHA Mishpatim, that if a person wants, they can be shown a way to live with integrity, to live a beautiful, happy life. We know there's a pasuk, Eved loive leish malveh, that a person who borrows money is a servant, is a slave to the one they borrow from. It's a servitude. There are some people who feel, unfortunately, lo aleinu, comfortable having somebody else's money in their pocket. Any money, whether it's mine or anybody, as long as I have money in my pocket, I'm feeling great. Whereas the Jewish way is that a person would not want to have anyone else's money in their pocket, again, unless they can't possibly exist without it. And then only if the parameters are clearly defined, to know, did they give it to me as a gift? Is it a loan? If it's a loan, exactly when and how does it need to be returned? After. We'll take questions after. One of the extraordinary events in this week's Parsha is where the Torah reviews what took place on Har Sinai, that Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people. First, he offered it to all the other nations, and each one of the other nations, when it was offered to them, this contract, they said, 1 minute, we have to review it and think it over very carefully to see if we're prepared to commit. And Hashem's response was, see you later. And it was only when it was presented to the Jewish people that the Torah tells us, Vayikach Sefer Habris, that Moshe Rabbeinu took this covenant, the Torah, Vayikra ba'oznei ha'am, and he read it to the people. They heard it with their ears. Vayoimru, and they said, Koil asher diber Hashem, na'aseh v'nishma. Everything that Hashem says, we will do and we'll hear. First we'll do it, and then we'll hear what he has to say. And the Gemara says that when the Jews made this statement, 2 angels came down for every single Jew, one for Naseh and one for Nishma. So that 1,200,000 angels came down to place 2 crowns on the head of every single Jew who made this fantastic statement, Naseh v'nishma. We'll do, and then we'll hear. And the question that many Meforshim, many commentaries ask is, that's not possible. And the Torah praises us that we were so great, we showed such confidence in Hashem, blind faith, that we're ready to do before we hear. Is it possible to do before you hear? There's no such. And the pasuk itself says that Vayikra ba'oznehom, that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke into their ears. He told them what Hashem wants. So the answer is, one of the answers that's given is that the word nishma means to hear. The word lishmoa also means to understand. To understand. That the Jews didn't say we'll do and then we'll hear. There's no such possibility. Such a thing is completely impossible. They said we're committing ourselves to do, to fulfill everything it says here, before we understand why. Without any whys. If this is the will of Hashem, if these are the instructions of Hashem, we don't need to know why before committing ourselves and before starting to do it. We're prepared to do 100%, and then to whatever degree Hashem is willing to share with us reasons, that's an added attraction. That's not part of the deal. That's not part of the contract. That's not part of the commitment. We are committed to listen to and to fulfill everything Hashem says without understanding it completely. And even those things that seem to be contradictory to us in certain cases, no problem. Especially since we find one of the Sforim writes, Ilu Yedativ Heisiv. If we would understand Hashem completely, we would be Hashem. The fact that there are things that Hashem tells us that we don't fully understand, that makes perfect sense. That's very fitting, because that makes it clear to us again that we are not the creator, we are not the one who's operating and running the whole world, so of course we're not on the same level of Hashem. Of course we couldn't possibly understand everything that Hashem does and why and what He wants us to do, etc., but rather to show this tremendous sincerity, this willingness. And this is the whole concept. There are many Sforim that try to explain reasons for the mitzvahs. Taimei HaMitzvahs it's called. And there are great rabbis who write that this is a very dangerous and delicate thing. Because unfortunately what could happen is that if a person thinks that they understand the reason for a mitzvah, and then there comes a certain time where that reason doesn't apply exactly the way they understood it, so the person thinks that mitzvah doesn't apply anymore. The whole concept of the reform movement and conservative movement was based to a large degree on this, that some of the founders of this movement were knowledgeable in Torah, and they thought that they understood, they thought that they could rationalize the Torah, that just like there's the Code of Hammurabi or there's a constitution of this, the Torah is a book of ethics and morals, and there's rational, logical reasons for every single thing that applies in the Torah. And if today in the modern world, there are things like electricity, the concept of not lighting a fire in shops, of course, because to strike a fire a few thousand years ago was major work. And Shabbos is a time when you're not supposed to be doing work. And this would be heavy labor. But today, by flicking a switch and I can turn on electricity, of course, those laws don't apply. Chas v'shalom. This type of thinking, this type of trying to rationalize the mitzvahs, chas v'shalom, and come up with purely rational reasons for the mitzvahs, this led many people astray into all kinds of terrible, terrible paths, way, way offline. Whereas the Torah makes it perfectly clear here that Hashem's love for the Jewish people, His love and respect, and our initial commitment and our eternal commitment is Na'aseh v'nishma. It's that we accept what Hashem says, and we're committed completely, and whatever we can understand is nice. And even once we're given reasons, even today that we have the Zohar HaKadosh, we have the Arizal, we have Sifrei Kabbalah and Sifrei Chasidus, which give fantastic, spectacular, beautiful explanations behind the mitzvahs, we know that the mitzvah is not limited in any way to that explanation. That's one insight of what this mitzvah is about. Just like Hashem is infinite, the Torah, which is an expression of Hashem's will, is infinite. It's not bound by any one reason or any thousands of reasons. We know that there's a story with the Arizal, who was one of the most outstanding leaders of the study of Kabbalah, that the Arizal was once resting on a Shabbos afternoon. He took a nap, and one of his students walked in on him, and he saw that the Arizal's lips were moving while he was sleeping. And he tried to lean over to hear what he was saying, because he knew that this was Torah. And the Arizal opened his eyes, he woke up, and the student said, Rebbe, would you be willing to share with me what you were learning now? Because the Arizal had revealed to his students that when he went to sleep, as by other great tzaddikim, we know every Jew, when a Jew goes to sleep, the soul goes up to heaven. And many of us are not conscious at the time, or we certainly don't remember what took place when we go up to heaven. But the great tzaddikim, when their souls go up to heaven, somebody of the Arizal's caliber was fully awake. And he said that he had an open invitation in all the different yeshivas in heaven. And the Arizal said to this student, Rabbi Avraham Halevi, he said, for me to share with you now the secrets that I just learned about Bilam's donkey, the story in Parshas Bolok about Bilam's donkey speaking and the whole discussion there, would take me 80 years. If I lived for 80 years, I would not be able to finish explaining to you the secrets that I just learned now about this. So we see again that even if a person studies 100 pages and 1,000 pages of Torah and studies and reads beautiful explanations and interpretations of the mitzvahs, if the person chas v'shalom believes that now I know why we do this mitzvah, then the person really doesn't know. Because the Torah tells us that the tachlis hayediyah, that when does a person know that they're getting an understanding of Hashem? When they realize that they don't know. To the degree that a person knows that they don't know, to the degree that a person understands that they don't understand, that shows a level of knowledge in Torah and spirituality. And chas v'shalom, the other way, if a person thinks that, now I understand, now I do understand, then they're really distant, they're really far. One of the laws that's presented in this week's Parsha, it speaks about the difference between a ganav and a gazlan, two types of thieves. A gazlan is one who steals by day, in broad daylight. Shows up with a gun, goes over to the bank teller, and says, if you want to see tomorrow, if you want to see this afternoon, I'd like you to share with me whatever you have there, all the cash, all the money that you have there. That's a ganav. A gazlan, on the other hand, that was a gazlan. A ganav, on the other hand, is one who shows that they're afraid of people. They're afraid of people. They don't want to be seen by anybody. They try to go stealthily when nobody's looking, at nighttime, or to go to perform their act of stealing in a manner where they'll do it where nobody will see them, nobody will catch them. And the Torah tells us that the penalty for the gazlan, the one who steals in broad daylight, his penalty is that he's got to return whatever he stole. The way that he does tshuva, the way that he corrects his crime, is by giving back whatever he stole. He stole $50,000, he's got to give back $50,000. He stole $50, he's got to give back $50. Whereas the ganav, the one who steals, who shows that he's afraid of people, he doesn't want people to see, but he's not afraid of Hashem. He denies the fact, he openly denies the fact that Hashem is watching. That just because people are not seeing what I'm doing, that doesn't mean that I'm not being observed very carefully. His penalty is double, kefil. he's got to pay 200%. Even though our logic sometimes would dictate, a person who walks in with a gun and, who's a more wicked, evil person who deserves to be behind bars? The guy who's embarrassed a little about what he's doing, like he's hiding what he's doing, or the person who does it openly in broad daylight? We would think the Torah says that the one who does it hiddenly, because of the fact that he's showing such a disregard for Hashem, such a disrespect for Hashem, that he respects people more than he respects Hashem. People he's afraid of, people he knows that they can, in daylight, they can see. So he'll try to do it in such a way that nobody can see him, denying completely that Hashem sees, Hashem is omnipresent, Hashem sees everything everywhere. The question is, why double? Why the double? How is the double the tikkun for this? And the answer to this question is based on a chapter in Likutei Moharan, chapter 13 in Likutei Moharan, and it's discussed also in several other places. And Rab Nosson Zal in Likutei Halachos, Choshen Mishpat, Hilchas Geneva Halacha Aleph, discusses this also, giving us an insight regarding Hashem and how Hashem conducts himself with the world. There's a term called hashgacha. Hashgacha means supervision. And there's a term hashgacha prati, detailed supervision, supervising every minute detail of what goes on. And this concept of hashgacha prati, the fact that we believe that Hashem supervises everything that goes on in this world and in all the other worlds, in the world of the angels and all the different worlds, and that Hashem is supervising everything to the most minute, finest detail. A fly, the whisker on a cat has whiskers, each individual whisker, Hashem made a decision as to how many whiskers that cat should have, and when a whisker should fall out, and when it should bend, and how. That's all under the direct supervision of Hashem. This concept of hashgacha prati is discussed in many sforim, and there are different opinions on this. The opinion that Rabbi Zal, Rabbi Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, and many tzaddikim took was a very strong stand that this is one of the most basic elements of faith in Hashem, that we do believe that Hashem is watching and supervising and controlling every detail, every leaf on a tree, every capillary inside the leaf, every little pipe inside the leaf is all under the direct supervision of Hashem. This supervision, we're told, the way Rabbeinu Zal explains it in Likutei Moharan, that Kaviyachol, when a human being looks at an object in a distance, there's a beam that goes out from the eye of the person towards that object. It strikes that object and bounces back and brings the picture of that object back into the person's eye, and that's when it registers in the brain of the person what this person saw. There has to be this two-directional traffic where the eye sends out a beam of light. It's called an oyer yashar, a direct light that goes out from the eye of the person to whatever they're looking at, strikes that object, meets that object, and then bounces off it and comes back, and brings the picture of that thing back into the eye, the retina, the different parts of the eye, which are attached to the brain, and the brain interprets what the person saw. Now we know, for example, Rabbeinu Zal gives an example that sometimes you can have somebody pass something in front of a person's eye, like this. Here I have a card that has writing on it, that has a picture on it, and somebody could put it right in front of my eye, and the person says, Did you see the card? Did you see what it says on it? No. How could you not see? I put it right in front of your eye. I passed it right in front of your eye. How could it be that you didn't see? The eye, there was nothing blocking the eye from coming into contact. What made it that you couldn't see? Rabbeinu Zal explains that it takes a certain amount of time for that beam of light to go out from the eye to strike the thing and to bounce back, to be able to bring that thing back into the eye. If we don't give it that amount of time, then even though the thing passed in front of the eye, but there wasn't enough time for this two-way traffic. Just like Lahavdil, a person sends somebody a messenger, he says, I want you to go to the store and get me an orange. And the person starts walking out of the door. He said, where's my orange? What do you mean, where's my orange? I didn't leave the house yet. What are you asking for your orange for? So I told you to bring me an orange. You walked. You left. I didn't leave. I'm not even down the steps yet. So too the way the human eye works, that there has to be this two-way motion. There has to be this reaching out and bouncing back. Rabbi Zal explains that Kaviyochel by Hashem also, there are psukim that he brings that show that the way that Kaviyochel, when we talk about the Hashgacha Prati of Hashem, depending on how close we are to Hashem, that determines whether we are in the eye of Hashem, whether Kaviyochel, this Hashgacha of Hashem looking at us, whether it's a look that reaches us and brings us back into the eye of Hashem, or not. And Rabbi Zal says that when it comes to the Jews, because we are referred to as being close to Hashem, and every mitzvah we do, the closer we are to observing the Torah, it brings us closer to Hashem. There's a pasuk, Mi kashem alekeinu b'chol koreinu elav, or koroiv Hashem l'chol koirav l'chol hashikru v'emes. There are many psukim that define our relationship with Hashem as closeness. And again, the more respectful we are to Hashem, the more observant, the closer we are to Hashem, the more we're part of this two-way traffic. Whereas the other nations who rejected the Torah, and the Torah in effect is also referred to as the eyes of Hashem. We know that the first word in the Torah, the Zohar HaKadosh tells us that the way that the eye is defined in the Zohar HaKadosh, it discusses the pupil of the eye, that black dot in the center of the eye, which is called the bat ayin. That's the pupil of the eye. And then there are three colored rings. Tlas gavnen de'ena, the Zohar HaKadosh speaks about. Three colored rings around the pupil, and it's the combination of these three colored rings and the pupil that define the vision of a person, the eye of a person. The word Shabbos is the letter Shin. The letter Shin has three heads, representing the three colored rings of the eye, and the remaining letters Bas refer to this Bas Ayin, the pupil of the eye. The Torah begins with the word Bereshis. The word Bereshis has a Beis. The first letter is a Beis. The last letter is a Tuf. We have that word Bas, which refers to the pupil of the eye, the Bat Ayin as it's called. The middle letters are the word Roshe, leaders. There's a pasuk in the Torah that refers to our forefathers, our three forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, are called Eile Roshe Beis Avoisam. These are our leaders. So again, the first word in the Torah, the word Bereshis, represents the eye of Hashem, the eye of Hashem upon us through the Torah. Hashem is looking at us through the Torah, and we are seeing Hashem. Our ability to see Hashem is through the Torah. When a person has this faith in Hashem, and when a person is close to Hashem, then there's this two-directional traffic. The vision, the Oyer Yoshar and the Oyer Choizer. This Ganef, who was only concerned about people, he was only afraid about making sure that no person sees him steal, but he denied the eye of Hashem, his penalty is kefil, because he's denying this hashgacha, this supervision of Hashem, which is this two-directional view. There's more detail for this that's not for now. If anybody wants a deeper insight to this or more clarity, again, you have chapter 13 in Likutei Moharan, which is entitled Ashrei Hashgacha, about the topic of Hashgacha Prati, and this first law in Hilchas Geneva and Likutei Halachos, where Rabbi Zal goes into detail. Shem should help that we should be zeicha, to be conscious at all times. We know the Shulchan Aruch begins with the words Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid, that a Jew is supposed to believe and act all the time as if I'm standing right opposite Hashem. Hashem is right in front of me. I'm in the presence of Hashem, and I know that He sees everything. And with His look, He's not just seeing, but the ability of Hashem to give everything that Hashem is giving, just like the Torah tells us, that when a rabbi is teaching Torah, he's not teaching through his mouth, he's teaching through his eyes. The pasuk says, "V'hoyu einecha royoises moirecha." When the Torah speaks about the Jews going to the Beis Hamikdash, it says to go to see Hashem there. This whole concept of the eyes, we should be zeichet to be conscious of the eyes of Hashem on us all the time, and to behave in that manner. A person, Rabbi Nachman once said that when a person is eating, there are people who, when they're in the company of dignitaries or something like that, they eat with tremendous etiquette and respect. When they're by themselves, they eat like an animal. Chas v'shalom. They put their feet into the plate, not just their hands into the plate. And Rabbeinu Zal said that the correct way for a Jew to conduct themselves is that even when the person's alone, to be eating as if they were sitting in front of dignitaries, because the ultimate dignitary, Hashem Himself, is with the person at all times. We should be zeichet to feel this and see this and conduct ourselves in this manner. And by conducting ourselves based on the principles of the Torah, we should be zeichet to a real Chaim Tovim, a good life, and be worthy of Hashem showing us His true kindness with the coming of Mashiach, the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, Meher of Yameinu, Amen v'Amen.